Hello, my Time Crunch teachers, and welcome to the show. This is your team teacher, Mariel Desrosier, and today I'm co-teaching with two dear friends from the Lunch Bunch. Third grade teacher, Stephanie Hedgpeth-Lopez.
Hello.
And technology coach, Melissa Shaw.
Hi.
And today we're sharing our worst first-year teacher mistakes. There's quite a few. But more importantly, we're also going to tell you the cheap or easy way to fix those errors. And while we'll be tailoring our recommendation for those just sort of entering the teaching field, I think even veteran teachers will find our suggestions useful. But before we begin sharing our ideas, ladies, how long has it been since you had your first year of teaching?
I think it's been 29 years.
29, yeah. Well, listeners, if you remember Stephanie Hedgpeth-Lopez, she was the first to speak in our last Lunch Bunch crew, and she had quite the story tale of how she began teaching. So yeah, it probably does depend on what year we want to count. What about you, Melissa? How long has it been since your first year?
18 years.
Ooh, me too, girl. 18. All right. So we've learned a lot in those, couple decades of teaching. But Stephanie, what are some of the things that you remember from your first year or suggestions you have for first year teachers?
Well, I am convinced that classes get together before school starts and they decide what they're going to do that drives you nuts and what they're going to be really good at. Like, okay, we're going to be the class that breaks every single pencil.
Oh, yeah.
But we're going to be really good at math. Okay, let's go. And they do that. And so what I learned is that something that worked really well one year might be just trash and just totally irrelevant the next year.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that you don't have to hold on. Well, you can hold on to systems that are continuing work, but if you find a system or an idea or a method and it's just not working, you can totally just blame the kids because it might be that this year's kids are just different. Like I have the paper shredder class. Like any piece of paper is going to get shredded on the floor. So, that changed my system on how they organize their desk or not. So yeah, you're right. Like every year has the thing, and they have their skill sets too. Like they're really great at cooperating or whatever, but they're going to leave their lunches in their cubbies every day.
Jeez, yes, they will. Also, and now I kind of stole this from Mariel because I remembered, is grading every single thing they do. Because what'll happen, she'll spend all this time and write notes and go, oh, here, this is what you need to do, and this is wrong. And then you give it to the child to hopefully take home, but then you will find them all in the garbage or the recycling.
Mm-hmm. Or the bottom of their backpack.
Oh, yeah. Like, this? You wanted this? I was supposed to take this home? So you got to have to plan what you're going to grade and keep track of. And I always like to think of, what is this process work or product work?
Oh, that's a good thing to remember. Okay, so yeah, is this process or is this product? Yeah, and you really only need to grade the product stuff.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then the process is more like watching them and kind of checking like, oh, they're getting it, or, oh, they have no idea what I'm talking about.
Right. And it can be an exit ticket or something little, or just conversationally, like a discussion, and it shows you where they are. I think that's a really great tip because I think many of us are guilty of grading every little piece of paper that comes across because you think it's supposed to matter. And I will say, I learned as a parent, that I don't want all the stuff. Like as a parent, I don't want all the paper. Like I don't need to see it. So if you're a first year teacher and you feel that guilt, like, but I made the kid do it, or like we did as a class, like please don't feel any obligation that the kid needs to or wants to see it, or the families. Now, of course, we are all kind of currently elementary school teachers or helping in that range. It feels a little different when it's high school, or like they're maybe not turning in as frequent assignments, but they're turning in ones that have maybe more grade weight or whatever. That's fine. But with elementary school, you certainly do not need to grade everything that comes across your desk.
And it was also even just more helpful to have a file for everybody to keep a sample or two and then look at it. I was just thinking the other day about a student in my class who at the beginning of the year would just copy pages of stuff of words that she could write. She'd read it going, oh, you just copied them. And then, but now she can, write sentences. It's really it's nice to kind of be able to look at how they've grown, because sometimes you get stuck in the moment like, oh, they're not learning anything. Nothing's happened. But if you can look at what they've done over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is nice to have a file on a kid where you just dump everything.
And you should also learn to choose your battles. Like, what is it that's going to be really important that they do? And also, what am I going to focus on? I know I just said like 2 different things at once, but I know that when I changed grades and things, the important thing was to go, okay, I am going to really focus, say, on math. And the other subject, I'm just going to do what the teacher guide says, and that's all I'm going to do, because it's really hard to make it your own and to figure it all out at once. And you should really just pick one thing to focus on. And then once you have that under your belt, then you can move on to something else.
Right. And I think this also applies to as you're grading too. Like I remember when I was teaching middle school and I was grading essays, you know, if it's their rough draft, I don't need to correct their spelling and their grammar and every little punctuation part. Like we're looking for content ideas and product. And more importantly, are they even answering the prompt, or did they, you know, go in a different direction? So I wasted a lot of my time when I first started teaching. And by the way, my first year I taught preschool, but my first year in like public school was 6th grade. So I spent a lot of time grading things that I didn't need to grade because they didn't need it in that step. So they don't need all of those little red marks on their first draft. But more importantly, like the kids should be doing that on their own, right? So like I shouldn't have to be correcting. I should be teaching them the editing skills opposed to just doing it for them.
And that's another good way of like not just picking, okay, tell them, okay, you have to do all these things, but this is the thing I'm grading for this paper. I am just looking that you put a capital and a period everywhere. And that also takes the pressure off of you, and you are grading something and looking at a skill. It also kind of takes the pressure off of them so they can kind of concentrate on one thing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I had one teacher instruct us when we were learning how to draft and write to reduce the stress on spelling mistakes, of just to write an SP like above a word, so that you were learning to self-manage. Like, I need to come back and I'm not going to worry right now and stress about sounding out or like making sure that that word is spelled correctly and get stuck in the process. And as a person assessing it too, it helps take that stress off of that. We all make mistakes, and you do it actually in person, like when you're writing on the board too. Like, I'm not quite sure about this word, because the more you teach, also the less sensible words seem to be when you're trying to write them in front of others.
Totally. Yeah, I actually once had a writing coach that was teaching us teachers, and he said, especially for middle and high school, this was actually a cute little thing he did in his class that I picked up when I taught 6th grade, is the kids would just say dictionary. So they're writing a sentence, and they go dictionary, and he goes yes, and they go facetious, or like, assignment, or whatever word it is that they don't know how to spell. And he just told them, and then they would write it and they'd move on. And it was really a clever way to sort of deal with those, what is it, tier 3 words or whatever, where it's like very content specific vocabulary, or maybe it's like a word that's borrowed from another language, or whatever it might be. Like, you can just ask. I mean, I do that as an actual adult. Like, I'll look up how something's spelled. So why make this kid struggle through the process, especially if it's a word that's coming from another language, because the spelling patterns are going to be very different. So they would just go dictionary, and they'd say the word, and he would tell them. And then he developed it even further to have, they used to say thesaurus. So they'll be like, thesaurus, and he'd go yes, and they go sad, and he would say like, oh, melancholy, or like whatever. And so he would like throw out words, and it was cute because it got to the point when I did it that other kids would answer before I did. So if the kid said dictionary and said a word that another kid knew how to spell, they would spell it to them. Or if they said thesaurus, all of a sudden all these kids would be like yelling out all these synonyms for the words, which was a cool.
Powerful.
Yeah, isn't it? I thought that was cool. Especially since I'm not a strong speller. It was cool when like Drew knew how to spell all the words, and he would answer it for me.
My spelling goes out the window the later in the school year it is.
Yeah.
Because I've been looking at things wrong. I'm like, I don't know. How do I spell what? That just is a weird word. How do I spell it?
Or how many people are watching. Like, I always joke, I feel like I have pretty fast math computation skills, but I don't do public math. Like, you don't get to ask me a math question in front of a bunch of people, because then I'll just like stall. But privately, I'm like super fast at it, just without it all. Don't do public math, man. Not in front of like a bunch of teachers who are doing it faster than I am. Stephanie, do you have any other hints for our first year teachers or any mistakes that we or you might have made?
Well, I do know that sometimes you get kind of hung up on, I have to teach this lesson. I have to do this. I have this. We need to get this concept. And I've kind of, especially recently, I'm like, this is not working. And I will tell them, you know what? You guys aren't ready for this, or this is not working. And we will just stop and do something else. And it's a little bit freeing to know that sometimes that lesson in lesson book is just not reaching them. And even if it was like the perfect thing you did last year, this is happening a lot lately. Like, oh, this has worked for 3 years in a row. And I didn't do it during distance learning. And now all of a sudden you guys have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So you have to just give yourself the freedom, like if it's not working, have your backup plans. Like we have some online things to do, or, you know, they love to read, you know, give them time to read. That's always a good use of your time so you can refocus and readjust your lesson.
That's true.
To make it more useful.
Yeah. Everyone needs more time reading.
And,
they
and
really
I've
do.
given up on pencils. I don't want your issue to be that I don't have a pencil. And so I bought like a ream of 144, or not ream, whatever you call it, a gross, that's what it is. 144 pencils that were already sharpened. It's like, I don't have a pencil. Well, here's one right here. And that helps a lot when that is no longer, you know, take some of their excuses away.
Totally.
I can't find it. Well, here's another one. You know, there's no reason, like, they will look for excuses. So you have to take away as many.
That's a good point. And
as
look
you
at
can.
Stephanie flexing her pencil wealth.
The gross.
Yeah. Gross. 140 pre-sharpened. That means you pay the
squared.
It was not that money. I had to
Were they
spend money.
Ticonderoga number 2 pencils?
No, they weren't. But they were on Amazon. Anyway, they were inexpensive, and it was like some money I had to spend. And I'm like, I'm just gonna buy this. I still have some, and I'll still sharpen my pencils and everything. But I have that little backup.
Yeah.
And you know, I just here you go.
I knew a teacher that just had the big box of the golf pencils because 1, they're pre-sharpened. 2, they're already like nubbin, so you're not going to have them grind it down to small because it's already started small. And granted, yes, it doesn't have any eraser, but for the kid that needs to just like write something in that moment, the golf pencil's perfect for that. Oh. Yeah.
I had those for field trips, and then I put the eraser on the point part to carry it around so it doesn't stab you in your pocket or something.
Oh, that's like a cap.
Teacher tip.
Oh. What? That just like blew my mind. And it was like, what are we, 18 years in? I was like, you can take the eraser and make it a cap for the pencil that the kid will inevitably poke somebody with. But then when they need it, they can flip it back around.
Yeah, and then they have their eraser, which some of them eat them, apparently.
I feel like we could do a whole episode on pencils. Like between my system, your system, the golf pencils, what kind of pencils you want. We haven't even gone
what they do with pencils.
What they do with pencils.
So how some classes have had like a commodity to how many pencil shavings you could save in a little bag.
Oh, yeah. Or they glitter. They make it into like pencil glitter.
Well, they were doing it with
confetti.
crayons too. And they would save it. I think some kids were even selling it at recess. It was really weird.
What
There's
kind
a
of
market
pencil
for that?
sharpener?
Well, like it was mainly crayons. They would just.
Oh, yeah.
But I think pencil shavings were in there. And they save them in little plastic bags in their desk.
I think any high school teacher listening to us will have no idea how we could possibly talk. But that's what I learned going from middle school, elementary school, is like pencils consume my life. Like picking them up, finding them. What are the best? I only want Ticonderoga number 2, and I want a full eraser on it. Stop snapping the erasers off. And I literally made a YouTube video just about my system because I could not stand thinking about pencils that much in my life because it just took too much time.
I have a pencil sharpener. Do I let a kid use it? And the second you let him use that mechanical pencil, there's that one kid that jams something in there and then it doesn't work anymore. Mm-hmm. And they took all the manual pencil sharpeners out of our classrooms.
Oh, right.
I'm so bummed because at least there was that.
Yeah, they couldn't grind it down to a nubbin.
Yeah, and I gave them pencil sharpeners and they would lose them and I found them in little bits everywhere. Seriously, pencils is probably what makes a lot of people quit.
Right. So if some
The bane.
Yeah. The high attrition rate due to pencils is probably what they found when the district interviewed all of us. They're like, well, some of it was teacher pay, but most people it was pencils. Anyways, back to first year teacher things besides having to be consumed by pencils. Anything else you want to share before Melissa shares her ideas?
No, just don't be hard on yourself and look for help when you need it. There's always somebody that around campus. And it doesn't even have to be in your grade level. Sometimes go out of your grade level to find somebody that, will listen and help you out. Because a lot of teachers, that's what they like to do. I mean, there's some that just want to keep to themselves, but there's a lot out there that will be happy to help you.
Right. And we all remember what it's like to have our first year. Yeah. So we remember what it feels like, the struggles, So I think, if most teachers are happy to help. And if they're not, it's obvious who just wants to peace out in their car at 3 o'clock.
You also find a lot out after you have kids. You go, wow, why did I do that? Because I understand, not that you have to have kids to be a teacher, but you get this different perspective. Like, wow, I'm never going to assign homework on vacation because I had one kid that had to do it and the other two didn't. And it was horrible at my house.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's funny because a lot of people asked after I had my kids, did having kids make you a better teacher? And I was like, no, man, being a teacher made me a better parent because you've gone through so many dozens of children and seen what systems work or how to approach different conflicts or personalities or whatever that, I think I'm a better parent just because I've been a teacher. I don't know if it helped me be a better teacher just having my own kids. I think it definitely helps in things like that, like homework or what's important or whatever.
Well, I have
patience.
I have a special needs kid at home, and that's also we're like, wow, maybe this kid is not sitting because they can't, and so I have a little more flexible, I try to find ways for them to move that's acceptable. No, you can't roll on the floor in the middle, but if you need to stand on your desk and pace right there, go ahead. But this is your zone that you can move in.
Yeah, it can make you more empathetic to certain challenges or just personality quirks or whatever it might be. Melissa, you are full of helpful tips. So what do you have for us?
I want to piggyback off of what Steph was just mentioning, though, that fear in the beginning of your career of asking for help. Would you guys say that you were comfortable in your first year?
Oh,
going
totally.
forward?
No, I'm just kidding.
I was at a private school and it was
you had 3 first years because you kind of no, I don't mean
true.
like it
Every
was
time you start a different context.
Exactly.
No, and I did, and it was in it. And there were times when I couldn't really ask, or when I did, I didn't feel comfortable. It felt like people were making me feel like, well, you should just do that, And it was hard.
No, yeah, I feel like
More
there's
instructive than supportive.
Yeah, there's a lot for me. There's a lot of insecurity. I felt a need to prove. I had a weird situation where I was actually finishing, I was doing my teaching credential as I was simultaneously teaching, because this is when, just like now, our district was super short on teachers. So they were doing that emergency permit thing where it's basically you look somewhat competent. You can have a job. Oh, you're in college? Even better.
You have a pulse.
Yeah, exactly. You seem to like children. And so my first year I was teaching and I hadn't even done my student teaching, which felt kind of weird because then I did student teaching and I'm like, haven't I been doing this already for a year? But anyways, yeah, and so I felt like there was a steep learning curve, and I had the self-imposed, I need to look like I know what I'm doing, but you don't.
They teach you to fake it till you make it.
Exactly.
Right? That is this mantra that we all, and throughout our careers and decades deep, we still, to a degree, have to do that also. But there's no college course or prep that truly helps you embrace or get ready for the reality of being a teacher.
Oh,
a
totally.
First year teacher.
Yeah, now I'm really good at pretending not be freaked out by head lice. When they come up and hug you, and then they're like, my head's itchy. Will you look at my head? And it's like, next time, could you ask that before you hug me? Just to be clear. No, but yeah, in terms of content and teaching, it is, it's a character. That's how I went into it. It's a character I'm playing. Miss Desrosier is a character I'm playing. And, that way, if Miss Desrosier makes a mistake, I'm like, oh, that character this is a character arc. Yeah. She just needs to learn how to, communicate better. And because I had to absolutely, and unfortunately, I think I learned this too late in my career, I had to separate me as Mariel, the person, from Miss Desrosier the role or the profession or the career, because otherwise any failure, any challenge, any rough conversation, I would just take it to heart. I would take it way too personally. But really, it ultimately is a job. So for me, I needed to learn that distinction, so I didn't feel like it was always just on me.
That is so true. I feel like I was so afraid to speak up. I was 23 when I started. My very first day of teaching, I had a student come in and start slamming the desk and yodeling. And
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that, but I just had a mental picture like with lederhosen and stuff. Anyways, go ahead. They were not dressed like that, but go ahead.
But I was this young teacher who was fresh out of grad school. I have my master's in education, and I have no idea how to respond to yodeling and classroom disruptions, or the how to manage all of these huge teacher editions of curriculum that I'm being forced to teach. And I was trying to play a part of, I'm competent, I will get this. And if I don't speak up, if I'm a quiet leader, then I will get through it more successfully. I didn't know vulnerability yet.
Oh, yeah.
And that power of the community. But I was given sage wisdom at the beginning that I always tell my teacher friends and mentees of, embracing, knowing who you can trust, like really building those connections on campus, particularly your office staff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Your custodians.
Oh, I forgot that. Yes.
They
Make friends with the office staff and the custodians.
Oh, yeah.
Run the school.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I actually remember when I was in credentialing school, one of the professors, she said, everyone thinks that, you have to, whatever, like kiss up to the principal or like be BFFs with your department head or your team lead. And she's like, yo, if you piss off the custodian, your life is going to be terrible. Not that they're going to take it out on you, but like they get to prioritize what work orders happen unless you want a leaky, panel in your corner. So she was like, the first thing I did is I brought him donuts and he fixed my leaky corner that the other teachers were saying like, oh, that thing's never going to be fixed. And she's like, yo, donuts fixed by Friday. But yeah,
Power of the glaze.
and not only that, but it's like, man, they have a hard job. Custodial staff, front office staff. I always think of them being like the front line, meaning they are my human shield. If an angry like parent comes in, or if there's just like a situation or whatever it might be, like they decide if that gets through and when that gets through, right? Or like routing phone calls, like they know not to do it in the middle of your teaching and that sort of thing. So yeah, those people are key. And not only that, they run all the logistics for the school. They know the scheduling ahead of time. They know the days off. They know who has prep when, or like who's out sick. So yeah, those custodial staff in front office are huge key players in a school.
Yeah. Essentially, don't quarantine yourself in the four walls of your classroom. Get out, make connections, ask for help.
Eat lunch with people.
Eat lunch with people.
I know that's like in the last episode where I love it. I will always remember this about you, Stephanie, how you just walked up to me and you're like, we eat over here. Like it wasn't an invite. It wasn't a question. It was just like, follow me, Padawan. And I will
hold my hand.
Yeah, hold my hand. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, okay, thanks. Like it'd be at the cool. It seriously did feel like when high school when you're standing there with your tray and you're like, where do I eat? And then you like sheepishly ask, no, Stephanie, we eat over here. And I'm like, oh, thanks. And on Wednesdays we wear pink. No, on Wednesdays we wear a union shirt. But yeah, no, that is super helpful, is being around others and just for camaraderie, if not for help, but and just knowing people.
Outdoors also, getting vitamin D together, like soaking up fresh air together. It can feel a little constricting, again, just being so trapped in your classroom.
That's true.
And if everybody's crazy that day, you're like, what did I do? What did I do? If you go and talk to everybody, usually there's like some weird trend or something happening at the school where they're all just nuts. And you feel a little better knowing, okay, I've done what I can. There's something going on. It's,
yeah, that's true. Right. It's not, especially if you're a new teacher, you don't understand that, like, yo, that week before spring break, good luck. Like, good luck doing anything. Or
the day after Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
Windy days.
Oh yeah,
Windy-
wind.
Oh.
Wind more than any other weather. Granted, we don't have like snow blizzards here in California, but yeah, wind by far is like the weather pattern that makes them the most bonkers and doesn't make you would think it would be rainy day because they're stuck inside all day for recess. No.
No, the
it's
rainy
windy.
day recess, they love it. They want to be in there. They're like so chill during the rainy day recess. During the recess.
Right. But not windy days.
I think their little ions are like activated and they're just all agitated and they can't sit still.
Oh right, like when like lightning's about to
yeah,
strike.
that kind of thing.
Exactly. No, but that's a good hint, Melissa. It's like actually get outside, get out of your classroom. I mean, I remember when I was a first year teacher, oh, this sounds so terrible even saying it now. Like I would stay in during lunch and grade. So there's like two bad things I did. One, I was grading things I probably didn't need to grade. And two, I was staying in during my lunch, which was like super, or eating at my desk. Oh, so sad. It sounds sad.
We've all done it. We've all done it because, like Steph was saying, you felt this pressure to grade everything. You didn't want to be taking it to and from school and home and like let that mountain build up. So sometimes lunch, like being able to be productive for a few minutes, it's something that we've all succumbed to, but it does not add to your self-management or your like ability to find peace and comfort in your daily routine. And self-management, that's one of my next tips too.
Tell us
For
about
first
that.
year teachers. Okay. Again, we are all in the elementary context, so our bladders are trained to hold it
You
for
pee at 10,
2-hour
12.
increments.
You be at 10, 12, and you play at 1:32.
Yeah.
No, that's actually a good point because I was joking that with some friends that weren't teachers, shockingly. I didn't even think I had those people. But I was like, teaching is one of the few, well, and maybe like shift work where you have to be like, let's say, you know, like at a grocery store or something where you're like interfacing with customers during a set time period or like an hourly employee. But teaching is definitely one of those professions where you're like, I can only use the restroom during this time and this time because and this isn't quite so true with high school, but definitely elementary. Like you're literally not allowed to leave the kids in the room by themselves.
Right.
So you can't just like peace out and then go to the restroom unless you're like on our massive text thread that we have where we're like, can somebody come to my class, like go to the bathroom, which is super fun when you're pregnant.
Another reason to make friends with office staff.
That's
Right.
true because they will coordinate the bathroom breaks for
Yeah.
you.
You won't feel afraid of the shame that you might incur if you're asking too often to use the bathroom.
Well, most of us are women in elementary school, and we're all at different stages. Give you different reasons that you need to run.
Yeah. So drink a lot of water and make sure you make time to pee.
Yeah.
That is,
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you do it.
Oh, I was just saying I don't know why this stuck in my head, but I once heard somebody tell me, never get into an elevator if you have to pee. And I remember that because for some strange reason, maybe I like picked the bad elevator, but I've been like stuck, like short-term stuck, like 5 or 10 minutes in elevators more than once.
Wow.
And I always think to myself, I'm so glad I peed before I got in the elevator because who knows how long I'm going to be in here. But yeah, so irrespective if you're going to be a teacher or not, don't ever enter an elevator if you feel like you have to pee. Get the next one.
Take the stairs.
Yeah, take the stairs. See, this is why Melissa's doing our self-care because she knew to take the stairs. Anyways, all right. Sorry, I interrupted you. Please continue with the actual helpful tips.
Let's see. Self-management. If you have a closet in your classroom, it is totally acceptable to go in there and pretend to find something if you need to cry.
Oh,
Or if you need to pass gas.
yeah.
That's where you stand by the door and look out, facing in.
Longingly.
Oh yeah. Oh, I thought. Oh no one knocked. Oh, okay. That was weird. I thought I heard somebody knocking.
Or allergies. You get bad allergies.
Oh yeah. I thought I was gonna sneeze.
Your eyes water because of the allergies.
It happens.
I think it's very kind, Melissa, that you're not the type of teacher who floats on the kids as you pass them. So yeah, if you need that closet to cry or whatever, I do think it's nice to have a little like space that is yours where a child's not like directly in your face for whatever reason. But yeah, you have a free pass to pretend like you're looking for those pencils and have a moment to yourself, regroup, and come back.
Absolutely. Take your sick days. Take your days. You have them each year. I am in a position right now where I do have a number of sick days that are saved up, that are in a bank, and I'm going to need to use them as I'm getting ready for maternity leave, but I think that there is such a fear for teachers to relinquish control for a day. And it is really time consuming to create lesson sub plans.
Totally.
And in the culture we have right now, we're not even sure if there will be a sub to help cover your class for you. But I highly suggest all new teachers take your days. You earn them, and nobody's going to judge you for them. Just make sure that you take your mental health days as you need them also.
Can I add on that note? You should make emergency sub plans so if your fellow teacher's stuck in your room, you have something to do. But also don't stress about them. Leave things that anybody can do.
Yeah.
And there have been times with, like, I get the stack of papers they did, go, oh, great, they did them, and I just throw them away. Because, it's just, I always leave things that are practice.
Right.
Or write down page numbers of things we passed. Oh, you got to review this. So please make plans, but don't freak out about it.
Yeah. And honestly, like, you can skip a day or two or whatever in your district pacing guide, because sometimes they need it, and even if you're there, sometimes they need you to skip a day or two, or review, not skip forward, but like just take a break and like review something. And shout out to Jenny, because she's the one that came up with the bomb idea for the emergency sub plans, where every time you like run extra copies of something you don't use, you put it in the emergency tub. Anytime you have some like lesson you didn't teach or some book, you just throw it. Yeah, like I literally made an entire video. I'll link it in the show notes of how I create my emergency sub plans at the very beginning of the year, like within the first week or so, or even before school, where basically you're just throwing in a bunch of reading lessons and like some math. And it can even be from the year before, because obviously if you're a second grade teacher like I was and you pull the first grade stuff, most of the kids can do it independently. So the sub doesn't necessarily have to teach new content, and that's fine. The kids love it. They feel successful. They want to show off when you come back. Look, I did this by myself. Yeah. So having those emergency sub plans so you can take a real day off. And not every district, we like out in our sick days roll over, or some of them carry over for different reasons. But a lot of schools, they don't. So you might as well use them. And that's why they're there. Because, like, for example, it was kind of actually funny. I had a friend who she never took them, not because she didn't want to be out sick. She just luckily, I don't know, she taught kinder and she was never sick. So I don't know what this lady did. But anywho, she got to like April 28th and she's like, I have so many sick days banked from the last couple of years. I could take the whole rest of the year off if I wanted to and just be done. Yeah. But yeah, so just use them because that's what they're for.
And try not to use them to do report cards. Try not to take a day. Ew. I know many people who are veteran teachers, that they feel like it's the only time they're going to be able to get work done is if they stay at home to get work done.
No.
So don't do that, new teachers. Don't do that.
And also don't leave something for the sub to do that's like crucial to something you're going to grade, or that they have to get done, or they have to, because then you'll go, oh man, they did it wrong, or they've, half the kids lost it, or they didn't turn it in, and you have to do it over again anyway. Yeah. So always just review and practice when there's a sub.
I like spending a lot of time at the beginning of the year doing math games with my students, and like community building games, so that they have at least 5 games that they know how to play if with any adult facilitating them. So I usually like to include some sort of a math concept building game in my sub plans.
Well, that's a great idea. Yeah, you spend the first week or two teaching them how to play the games, and then they're excited when it comes out for when the sub's there, and then they can teach the sub, and also they know how to play it.
There's tons of games you could do with just a deck of cards.
Sure.
I also was in this idea of self-management, and we were talking about just how consuming this job can be. I remember my first year. Did you guys ever have where you just waking up in the middle of the night still thinking about that one student or that one task you forgot to do before you left school?
Girl, I still have way interesting nightmares from 25 years ago. Like I absolutely have the job nightmares, or yeah, for sure.
It was around the clock. I felt it was really hard to disengage my brain. And so one tip that I started doing was sleeping with a Post-it pad next to me. So if something came to my mind, I could just write it down and then fall back asleep.
Oh, that's a good idea. So it's not that mental rehearsal. You can unload it on the paper and decide in the morning whether it's
Viscerally
worth
let it go.
Right.
Yeah. And then, yeah, exactly. I can synthesize it at a more appropriate time.
That's actually a good hint, because sometimes it's that mental rehearsal that kind of breaks you down more than any other task. It's like, I gotta, or even something as simple as like, maybe not always something that you're, worried or stressed about, but something you just need to remember to do. Like, oh, I have to remember to pack my whatever in the morning. Having that notepad and just writing it down, you're like, okay, great. Now I can relax because I don't have to remind myself to do that thing.
Mm-hmm. And like you, I like to set reminders on my phone, but if I'm not engaging with technology, I'm more likely to fall back asleep.
Yeah, that's a good hint. Yeah, having the physical paper opposed to opening the notes app and then, hey, now I'm going to check this. Oh, look, a text came through. Yeah.
Also, new teacher tip: the power of a wristwatch. You can.
I love it. Melissa's spitting practical fact. Go ahead. I know. I bet I know what you're going to say, but I want to hear it. I love it.
Well, I mean, beyond using it for PE and games and like in classroom application, that classic nightmare of being late.
Oh yeah.
I think I've talked to so many teachers recently who have been kind of reflecting on their first year of teaching and who forgot to set their alarm, who wish that they had a backup alarm set. And also I just find it to be something that's just like a really helpful little tool throughout the day to help me manage and not have my students catch me like staring at the clock and trying to figure out how we're going to get through these next 24 minutes.
Lunch begins in 23 minutes.
But it seems like a watch is like one of those veteran tips of just help yourself with time management.
Oh, for sure. And especially with like smartwatches. Like I have 11 children with IEPs in my class. Mm-hmm. And I have 22 students, public math, so that's half my students, have IEPs, which means they're going to the speech, therapist, they're going to the resource teacher, they're going to the adaptive PE, and it's different kids, different days at different times. And if I didn't have that set as a reminder on my phone, like I wouldn't know, in their second grade, so they're even still learning how to tell time. And so, yeah. And what's cute is I actually set different sounds for different kids. Oh. So like so-and-so kid knows like, oh, the bird sounds, it's time for me to go to resource, or like, oh, Hawaiian, what am I trying to say? Steel guitar. Yeah, steel guitar. Like, oh, that's my turn to go to whatever. And yeah, it's such a nice tool to have so that and then it's funny because then the kids actually start learning the times they have for things just because it's that sound and whatever correspondence.
Or the other kids will go, hey, you're supposed to go here or there.
Yeah, they remember for them.
Oh, that's also if you have bus duty or yard duty, whatever, you make sure the children know, or either that or post it next to your clock.
Oh, that's a good idea.
There'll be some kid that will always tell you, hey, don't you have yard duty today? Hey, aren't we supposed to leave early because it's bus duty?
No, that's a good hint. Put the reminders under the clock, because then they'll glance on it and they'll remind you. That's why I always have, how you have like a remote for the TV? I always make one kid watch where I set down the remote, because I'll set it down somewhere and I'll forget what it is. So I'll be like, hey man, it's your job to watch where I put this, because I'm a grown adult who cannot track the items I use. But yeah, the hint of putting the reminders under the actual clock is a good one.
Awesome. Homework, overrated. Another tip, as Stephanie was mentioning earlier, sometimes there's the process, there's the product, there's also what gain. The gain has to outweigh the pain.
Oh, say that again. I love it.
The gain needs to outweigh the pain, and there's so much pain that accompanies mindless homework.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I had mentors who taught me to pick some of the homework to get feedback on.
Right.
But for the most part, I took it from when they turned it in, and then I took it out to the staff room and I recycled it. Mm-hmm. It also makes great kindling for bonfires.
I was going to say, I just now have a checklist, and I encourage them to do it, and they're supposed to read for 20 minutes. And we also brainstorm, like, I don't care what you read the cereal box, read, the newspaper, read the Swan ads, whatever. And then you need to practice your math, and you need to practice words in some way. And I have 2 online applications that we're supposed to do at school anyway. But I also write, play a math game with a friend, use flashcards, write in a journal, just something that there's no excuse. Like, I didn't have internet. Well, you could have chosen any one of these things, but pretty much they check it off and turn it in, and that's it.
Right. It should be review. Right. Should be engaging, review, practice, something they can do independent. And that's something I actually learned way too late in my career too, is if the student needs assistance, it creates a lot of problems, because either the person, depending on what the homework is, the person assisting them has to understand the methods and the processes. Like, for example, in 2nd grade math, we're not teaching them the standard algorithm of double or triple digit subtraction and addition, where you line it up and you subtract the ones and you carry and blah, blah, blah. They're using they're using number lines, they're using, base 10 blocks, whatever. But if basically the adult is 30 years old or older, they're only going to know that standard algorithm. Right. So they're going to struggle trying to have the kid do it their way, which I totally understand, because they're going to use the method they know, and the kid is going to have no clue what they're teaching. And then that's going to create conflict. And then you're reteaching anyway. So that's ridiculous. Or go ahead.
Do it wrong.
Yeah, or they do it wrong.
Or brother or sister does it,
Yeah. Or they don't have an adult to help them, right? And so this poor kid is struggling through something beyond their skill set, and it just creates the pain, right? That you're talking about, Melissa. And yeah, they don't need that. So if it's a game, it's an activity, it's something fun, or something super easy that they can knock out that just reinforces a skill.
I even stopped, because people always used to say, "Oh, you have to sign that, you read this." I'm like, we need to teach them to be self-reliant. Plus, I always had kids that say, well, nobody could sign it because my mom works all night and they don't get home till this time and they forgot to sign it. And I'm like, it's not the parents' homework. It's for the kid and to help them.
Right.
So I just
forget
it.
Just do our best to cultivate a joy of reading in class that they're going to want to try and bring home with them. That's all I expect from my students is you are reading. You have weekly goals that you want to try and meet, whether that's at home or in school. And as you guys were mentioning, I think it's really fun to have a choice board for them that's not required, but it gives them fun things to do or interact with their family. Cook a recipe together, follow steps on a recipe. Get that practice. Give your parents directions to the store.
Right.
Sing some karaoke. You're getting fluency practice. There's outdated ways and ideas of assigning homework that have no value and have shown no statistical merit, that I feel like as a new teacher, save yourself. Don't worry about the homework piece, especially at the elementary level.
Yeah. And, if you have an administrator that's you must do homework or give homework, at least, try and make it enjoyable for the kids. Because then you'll get a higher return rate. They'll actually turn it in. I did have a kind of funny story where when my son was in 1st grade, one of the deals I made with my husband is I don't help with homework, because when you're teaching all day, it's really hard to be cool, now I get to sit and do this worksheet with you. Yeah. And granted, he did most of it independently. So my husband would help. And I remember the day I overhear them in the room, and my husband's like, well, I don't know what this is supposed to be. And it was a base 10 frame, those little tables with the little circles. And if you're a teacher listening to this, you know exactly what that is. And you're like, oh, well, it's supposed to have them anchor to 5 or anchor to 10 and whatever. And my husband looked at it and he's like, is this supposed to be a number? What am I looking at? And it made me realize well, something that's really easy and understandable for a teacher makes no sense to a parent. And clearly my husband knows how to add single digit numbers, but because he hadn't seen the actual tool or the image, there's no way he could help my
There's
kid.
No context.
Yeah. And I will say my son did learn something because he taught my husband how to use a base 10 frame. So at least he understood the math well enough to help somebody. But there's no context, or if they haven't seen it in a really long time, it's don't put that on the families, because then that's assuming even the poor kid has somebody that can help them, right? So don't make it a struggle.
I have one last one, and that is to not be afraid of change.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
In this field that we're in, it's the long haul, and there are a lot of intervals along the way, and don't be afraid to spice it up and try new contexts. You do go through those kind of perpetual first year experiences when you do change, but being complacent in one context is not going to help you grow. And making sure that you're always growing and evolving will bring long-term joy and success in this career. Just switch it up, try new things. I remember my grad school mentor, she told me at the beginning that she would switch jobs every 3 years.
Oh, cool.
It was just like, the
Spice
first
it up.
year, the first year you're learning and everybody gives you a lot of grace. The second year you're learning together. The third year you feel like you've got it down a little bit and you're ready for a new challenge.
That's cool.
In my career, I've done about every 5 years.
That's awesome. So you or she would change what, grade levels or school or that
Usually
kind
grade levels, yeah.
Oh,
But,
okay. Yeah, and that's a really great hint is, every teacher is teachable. And so if you're not trying to learn something new you don't want to ever feel like you're stagnant or stale in what you're teaching or even if you are teaching the same grade. I don't know, even when I've taught the same grade for multiple years, I can't imagine doing it the exact same way, like reading the same book and doing the same thing. Like, obviously, you don't want to. Obviously, you don't want to change everything every year. But man, there's only so many times I can hear that story before I'm like, I don't really care about this character anymore. Like, I want a new story with a new, climax or whatever. But and also too, like understanding, especially if you're changing roles or changing positions, you're going to have more than one first year.
Exactly.
Right. Especially if you make a jump in age or grade level or subject, but for sure, most of my career is in middle school and coming down to second, man, like that is a huge transition in terms of, age level and development and curriculum and all that. So understanding like, it's okay. You can have more than one first year. You'll gain confidence and you'll gain new skill sets, but there are going to be elements that feel new.
Yeah, and it can inform you to know where the students are going or where they've been. Because sometimes you go up a grade and you go, oh, I know they should have learned this. So,
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Like, oh, yeah, if you go from like second to fourth, you're like, well, I know in second grade, this is the skills they were supposed to learn, or the other way. If I liked teaching sixth grade math and now teaching second, because you're like, oh, I know that in a couple of years, this is where they're going to need to go, or this is the kind of vocabulary they're going to learn. I'm going to start using it now and they can pick it up. Yeah, those are all really great. Are you ladies ready for mine?
Hit them.
All right.
Hit us with them.
Oh, man. I cannot tell you how happy I am that Pinterest was not a thing when I first started teaching. And I'll tell you why. Like, yes, it is great. Or teachers pay teachers for that matter. None of that. I don't even know if like Amazon, how long has Amazon been around? Like, I feel like nothing was around when I started teaching. I had a chalkboard. I literally did have a chalkboard. But anyway, so one, yes, those are great for looking for ideas. I got my cute library from there, but
shovel with them, Cole.
Probably nice. They had a slate and they wrote, no. Those are great for ideas. Like I think you can get cute things like, oh, this is how I want to set up my library or set up the desk. But then you start getting into the comparison of like, well, this lady has this very cool way that she teaches whatever. Or like, hey, instead of doing it like this, I'm going to create this whole worksheet. And even without Pinterest and TBT and all that, man, I spent so much time reinventing the wheel my first year, which was so stupid because one, use the district materials. They're there. If you're in a big enough district like ours, there's somebody, probably Melissa, who wrote the lessons for you or create a slide deck or something. And so use what they have. And granted, the first year, I almost felt like it's a little too overwhelming. Like you have this and this backup reader and the reader's theater, whatever. Like you don't need to use everything. But don't go out and waste hours searching for something that looks, better or cuter or more fun or engaging. What about you, Stephanie?
So I'm raising my hand. I wanted to also say it doesn't have to be all, cutesy decorated. It's okay. I've just given up on bulletin board paper because I hate hanging it. I'm short and it's annoying. And my mom used to help me because she's really good at it, but she's getting older and doesn't want to do it. Sometimes I'll just slap a border up and put everything in there. Yeah. Or I don't even put anything on the wall. And especially the first week of school. Yeah. It's pretty much blank. And that very first day we start making things like I am unique or whatever and just slap it on the wall. And at the end of the day, you don't need to make it all beautiful and cutesy. If you're that kind of person and want to,
great. Yeah, if you have the extra time.
I would rather spend my time trying to figure out what they need to know as opposed to, is my border straight?
Right. Yeah. You don't have to have a cute classroom. And one, they're going to be producing so much stuff to put on the walls anyways. Like you absolutely do not need to decorate
And
it.
hang it at an angle, then it doesn't matter if it's straight.
Oh yeah. I actually had a friend do that. She's
Hot
like,
tip.
I made everything purposefully like crooked so that it looks like
Yeah,
it
all
was
my posters
intentional.
are like, oh, happy
Yeah.
on an angle. Yeah.
No, I have completely given up on bulletin board paper because I use dollar store plastic tablecloths because they're already square, rectangle. You staple them up and you're like good to go. Because I don't know, like I think some of my most intense fights are me and that really big butcher paper where you're trying to rip it
And
vertically.
it is so cheap now. It used to be kind of nice, and you can go buy the nice stuff somewhere, but
True.
why bother?
Right.
Yeah.
I did buy a roll of wrapping paper just for my little bulletin board behind my desk where I put all my calendars.
Oh yeah, wrapping paper is a good one.
That's a good one too, because it's already square and fine, and you just
Right.
put the little border around it. And
Totally.
I use a twin sheet. A
that's
sheet
a good
from
one.
Ross.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, and that probably hides the like pin pricks or the staple marks and stuff really well too. Yeah, I feel like especially on Teachers Pay Teachers, a lot of the worksheets or activities are the same, can be the same basic structure, but they're just like cuter or they're whatever. Like it's more like a visual thing. And having taught lots of different grade levels, sure, you might have one or two kids that are like, oh, this is whatever, cute or fun. But the vast majority of children don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Just the aesthetics of it.
Yeah, they really don't. And honestly, I have found, especially my second graders this year, me hand drawing like a goofy cartoon of like me on the worksheet or of, you know, like a creature, even if it's poorly drawn, which it will be, is they find that so much more funny and engaging than, you know, whatever I could have purchased and it just is so time consuming too when you're trying to find the perfect one because you're spending your own money. Don't do it. Just do the basic, boring worksheet.
And plus, teach them how to create their little graphic organizers instead of, you know, making it all. This is how you do it. You know, I need to get back to this again. See, I even remember, I should do this. We had one, and the kids called it a bear claw because the way it looked. And the top hat, and they named the ones, and so we go, what are you going to use for this writing prompt? And I had just the outlines on the board of them, you know, I drew instead of a worksheet. And that also empowers them to kind of go, I know how to do this. I can do this on my own on a test.
Yeah, that's actually a really
Their own
good point.
self-management.
Yeah, and then the whole point of a graphic organizer is they're starting to learn what works for them visually, right? So you might as well give them the freedom of figuring out. And then you don't have to fight in line at the copy machine.
Because they jam as the bell's ringing.
Oh, if you're first year teacher, if you jam the copier, you need to stay there and fix it because nothing will make other teachers turn on you faster than you jamming the copy machine and running away from it. Because guess what? Now we all have our own code, so we know who it was. Yeah. We know who was logged in and walked away from it.
Marsh is walking by. She used to work for him, and she will fix it for you.
No, okay, so if you have jamming and jetting, don't be a jammer and jetter. And show up to your yard duty. Do not be, are you ready for my term? Don't be a duty weasel. Because if you don't show up for your yard duty and you leave that or bus duty or whatever on the other folks, like, we're all going to turn on you. So as long as you show up to those things, and you can, this is why you're friends with the office staff. Hey, so-and-so, I'm so sorry the bell just rang. I jammed the copier. If I bring you coffee tomorrow, can you go fix it? And they'll be like, sure. So that's why you want to be friends with office staff too. The other thing I did, and I know so many new teachers that do this because I remember we used to have to ask the custodian to not set the alarm. Do not stay late.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Don't do it because you need to go out in the sun and the air and like get out of there. But also I've like really looking back, unless it was maybe like a back to school night or open house or we had an event that night. There's not a single time where I was like, man, I'm so glad I stayed late to whatever, grade that
such
paper.
a better teacher.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
I mean, sunset.
Oh, for sure. And there's I think I had a teacher once tell me something along the lines of like, you know, Mariel, they don't give awards at the end of who stayed the latest. And I'm like, yeah, true. Don't stay late. Like, there is nothing that can't just be pushed to the next day or figured out.
Treat it like the laundry. As long as you have underwear, you can find something to wear, right? So as long as you
turn
have
it inside out the next day.
That first, whatever, set up the next day, it'll be okay.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. And if you have to use your own emergency sub plans for yourself, that's okay too. Just
That's
to make
where we
it through.
practice focused reading, where we're reading on our own or to each other. And
Yeah.
I'm going to listen to you. That's a very valuable thing to do.
Totally. And also not only leaving at the end of contract hours, but not taking it with you, because it's so ridiculous to shuttle the papers back and forth between home and school and you just don't do the work or you don't grade it. And having that hang over your head is just terrible. And this is going to sound like an unrelated story, but I promise it'll circle back to what we're talking about. When we were in high school, there was a kid named Ryan who ended up being, I think, our salutatorian or one of those. And what we didn't understand is he had like one of the highest GPAs, but he was at all the Saturday night parties. And we're like, Ryan, how could you possibly have the highest GPA after like Victor and like Mike, so-and-so, and you're like still partying? And he's like, on Friday, the bell rings, I jump in my car, I drive home, I do all of my homework. And he would Friday night, he wouldn't go to the football game with the rest of us. He wouldn't just like sit around and like eat or whatever the rest of us were doing. Mm-hmm. He went home, he knocked out all of his papers, all of his math, all his physics, whatever. And he just sat and did it all Friday. And then he had the whole weekend open to go like do, whereas the rest of us would be like making false promises to future Mariel. Future Mariel will totally do her homework on Sunday night. And then Sunday Mariel would be like, oh man, Friday Mariel screwed me over because she should have totally done some of this. So yeah, knowing that like, okay, getting back to teaching. If you just stay on 1 or 2 days, not late, but like to your contract hour, get your stuff done, break it into chunks, and then whatever doesn't get done on Friday, don't take it home because you're not going to do it over the weekend, and you might lose the stuff anyway. So just keep it at school,
unless you need the weightlifting practice.
That's true.
Like take a bag home. It's just there.
And of course, there's exceptions like report card week or something like that. But ultimately, if you are staying super late or you're taking things home every night, then you need to change one of the processes we talked about, whether it's what are you grading or what are you actually assessing with all these assignments, right? So yeah, don't stay out late. The other thing, and this is sort of funny for me to laugh about, because being a dean of students, almost all of my interactions were with parents, and they almost all centered around conflict, right? Because I'm either talking to them about their child who made a poor decision and it's a disciplinary thing, or I'm calling them because their child was a victim of some sort of like relational aggression or bullying or something. So like those are hard conversations because they revolve around conflict. My first year, though, I was so intimidated by parents. Yeah. I mean, I was young, like you, Melissa. Well, you were young, too, when you started teaching. We were in our early 20s, right? And so part of it feels like an age thing, especially if you're teaching students who have parents who are obviously like a lot older than you, you kind of have a little intimidation. But the way you combat that is making sure that the first point of contact isn't a high stakes conversation, right? It's not when that kid has gotten into like a fight at school or like cheated on a test or something that you have to navigate that's a little tricky. Reach out to every single family on the first day with something positive. Make that first point of contact something that is happy or sharing something about the class. And it doesn't need to be like a phone call or face-to-face. Maybe it's a sweet newsletter. Maybe it's like an email that sort of has, you create like a template or like a little bit of a form letter, but you're punching in the kids' names and like something personal, like, oh, so great to, the first day of whatever, second grade, and to hear that your son loves soccer or whatever it might be. And having that first point of contact, this is why of all the different duties we get assigned, I will absolutely sign up for carpool duty, because having that one or two, well, granted, I also like banging on the car things and telling them to slow down, but there's like a little power in that. But I also
I prefer yelling at the children to get back in line in the bus. So
So Stephanie likes the bus duty. I like the car one. But more importantly, a bunch of the parents are either waiting in their cars or standing around waiting for the kids. And you can have a quick little 10-second interaction and are like, hi, or like help the kid get buckled in their car seat or whatever it might be. And having those little touch points of positivity goes so far when you eventually have to have a conversation that's a little trickier to navigate. And because they've had these positive interactions, or they have this context of you supporting their kid or understanding their kid or just being happy or whatever it might be, navigating those harder conversations, I think, become easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's so important to build that bridge early and not wait months.
You should probably commit to like a couple phone calls the first few weeks just so that you get in that habit. So
Yeah.
when it is a big thing, because I know that's one of my intimidating things. Like, oh,
Yeah.
but most of the time, parents are totally understanding or they really want to know.
Oh, for sure. And even if you have like a relatively big class size, if you split it up where you're like, okay, I'm going to call 3 parents every day after school, it only takes like 2 or 3 weeks max to get through the entire roster. And, you know, you do that at the beginning of the year and man, it makes such a big difference. And also, if there's any parents listening, you cannot over introduce yourself. Meaning, I know your kids, I know their birthdays. I will absolutely forget what you look like. So every time you see me, you need to say like, you know, like I'm Anna's mom, or I'm like so-and-so's parent, or whatever it might be, or grandparent, or whatever, because again, I will absolutely like blank out because I've just taught so many children, or like I have that panic attack of like, wait, which of their kids did I teach? Because I know I taught 2 out of the 3. Was it the younger one? Whatever it might be. So yeah, as a parent, if you are just saying like, oh yeah, I'm so-and-so's, you know, even if you felt like you've done that already, like it's totally okay to keep reintroducing yourself just because we interact with so many parents and family members and grandparents and whatever it might be.
And if we see you without your child next to you, it's hard to contextually connect sometimes.
Or when you get old, a kid comes up, do you remember me? And I'm like, give me a year, a classmate.
Oh yeah.
You have grown. I look pretty much the same, except, you know, my hair is.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Because the kids will recognize like you, the teacher, no matter what. But then they went from being like a little kid, you're tying their shoes, to like a grown man. And you're like, oh, like I remember my husband and I were out eating and he like ordered a beer, and the woman who like served him, she's like, Mr. Rosie, I remember you taught me. And in my head, like, I could not comprehend teaching this grown woman. I was like, no, man, like that's a different Mr. Rosier who lives in the same town and looks just like me. Like that's clearly not me. And then she like, I was like, okay, this is gonna sound really dumb. I'm like, who are you? Because like I cannot picture. And she's like said her name, and I was like, she was this little girl where I remember peeling her orange. Like, how is she this grown person serving my husband a beer? So yeah. So if you're a child that I've taught, okay, so clearly I don't remember anybody. If you're a current parent, you need to introduce yourself 3 times. If you're a kid I taught more than just last year, you should probably introduce yourself because that'll help. Us who've been in the game.
The more classes that are in your head, the more it's like, give me a decade, something.
Oh, totally. Like I remember my first couple of years teaching, I actually had the class list like memorized just because you enter the grades and probably because I was grading too much. That's why I memorized all their names. But yeah, as the years go on, there's like so many dozens and hundreds of children we've taught. This is not sounding good for like staying in the game. One day you too will forget every child you've ever taught until they're helping you into your vehicle. No.
I did have something cool happen this year, though.
Oh, I want to hear it.
In terms of former students who reappeared. His name is Armando, and he was one of my 4th graders in my 4th year of teaching. And he is a first-year teacher this year. And he has reached out to me for just sweet, just reminders about things that we used to do and inspiration that he gained from our experience together. And yeah, I have now been in the game long enough where my former students are now teachers.
Oh my goodness, that is adorable.
Talk about a reality check. Yeah.
Shout out to Armando,
I know.
Mr. So-and-so and his new class. Mm-hmm. Oh, that is so cool, Melissa.
He was one of the innovators of the year at our ceremony
this year. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You're listening to 2 innovators of the year. Melissa won it twice or 2 years in a row.
Ooh.
So she's like double
That's the
innovator.
benefit of changing contexts. I've had a few different jobs in the last couple of years.
Yeah, if you're in a different like grade level or a department, you can get the Innovator of the Year award again. So Melissa's going to change her job until she's just done a clean sweep. Like one day she'll get it for HR and we'll be like, Melissa really innovated that HR department and got another trophy. That's really sweet. I like how my child's story is like, oh, this kid served us beer. And yours is like, mine became a teacher and decided to choose education fail. And I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure mine dropped out of school and was like, whatever. But that's very sweet. That's cool to have somebody come back as That's the other thing. If your first year teaching is older kids, like 6th grade, 7th, high school, whatever, like they age so quickly that you might have their kids in your class sooner or whatever. But if you taught kindergarten your first year and then you have your former students' kids, I knew somebody that did that.
My dad was teaching forever and coaching and everything, and to this day, we cannot go somewhere in town or have a repairman show up that he does not know in some way.
Right. Oh, you were my coach, or you taught me so and so. That is.
Oh, we're so sorry. We're the class that did that to you. You're so nice.
That's pretty funny. My last tip for first year teachers is I made the very foolish mistake of volunteering to do the school yearbook. And let me tell you why they always ask the first year teacher to do yearbook. Nobody wants to do yearbook. Not a single soul wants to do yearbook. And let me tell you why. It's not that it isn't fun or like cute to do the temp or even necessarily like hard. Like it's not like hard to do the software. It is just one of the most time consuming extra duties in that you will spend your entire life. Forget about pencils. You're going to be chasing people to get photos until like the deadline happens, just because maybe it's different with like cell phone. No, it's not. People don't take any more photos now. It's like so hard to get photos of every single kid. And then a sport, you're like, ask the coach, hey, can I have a photo of your team? And then they forget. And then you have to like fake it and be like, well, can they put on their uniforms right now and we can take a pretend, like tennis photo? And yearbook, I don't know. Maybe this is like a personal preference, but of all the things to sign up for, yearbook is the one I always stay away from because it's just so time consuming to get all the and you because you want every kid is supposed to be in there, right? And then you have to make sure all the names are spelled correctly, and it is just an incredibly overwhelming task. So you can do it after you've been in the game for a little bit. And also, this is why I think it's bonkers that they give it to first year teachers. They don't even know all the people, right? So like they're making them match the picture to the name, and it's like this poor person doesn't even know who these people are,
or they don't know they have the right to say no thanks.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. That's really the better. That's the better
like, point.
Yeah.
Not yet. I'll try that. Ask me again next year.
Yeah, you can pass on things.
Say no.
Yeah.
This is why you hope to live in a union state, and then you have a really great union rep like Stephanie Hedgpeth-Lopez, who will tell you that's not part of your contract. You can volunteer if you'd like, but that is not a contractual. You can say, no, thank you, and move on. Yeah, that's actually really important. Know what is and is not part of your contract. And then that way you can just blame that if it's something you don't feel like you have the time commitment for.
Building your voice of advocacy for yourself, for your students.
Oh, Melissa made me remember something. When you take your apple to school, you really should eat it.
You don't have the travel apple? Tell us, Melissa, the sweet little video you sent us of the travel apple.
It was a silly meme about what every teacher experiences, and it's this picture of an apple that like has made yet another travel to and from home and school, like yet to be eaten. And I have one of those in my bag right now as well.
In your lunch bag to the staff fridge, not eaten, back into your lunch bag, back into its home fridge.
Tomorrow's a new day.
I've switched to an orange because
they're
hardier.
Yeah.
They can travel even
further distances
and longer.
The international fruit. What a wonderful metaphor. Because like, oh, you give the teacher an apple. And we're like, we just travel from fridge to fridge and hope for the best. And one day we become an orange so that we can finish it out. And then
we have prunes.
I love it. It made it full circle. All right, ladies. Well, I'd love to end each episode with a little classroom story, and so I thought we could share. If you have a first year teacher story, that's great. If not, happy to share what you want. I'm going to keep mine short just because I think it's just a funny thing that happens with my name. So Desrosier is my maiden name, and I used to go by Miss Desrosier, but I've changed it to MS, so it comes out Ms. Desrosier. And the reason why is because when kids would say Miss Desrosier, if they had a pause, it actually sounds like Mr. Rosier. And so I had almost every single parent who met me in person would be like, you're a lady or you're a woman? And I'm like, excuse me? Like, was that ever in question? And it's because their kid would go home and say, oh yeah, my teacher's Mr. Rosier. And everyone thought I was some dude. So maybe that'll be my alter ego. But yeah, think about your name. my home ec teacher, this just popped in my head. My home ec teacher, if that's even still a thing, in middle school, her name was Ellen Mellon. She was Miss Mellon, and she taught home ec, and I cannot think of a more perfect, unless your last name's like Pencil or like something like that. Ellen Mellon teaching home ec cooking, it was just the sweetest. Shout out to Miss Mellon if you're still out there teaching, making sure we don't burn ourselves. But yeah, so test out your teacher name. You can change it. You can go by whatever name. Like I go by Miss D now with the littles. So that's actually kind of fun too when you first start teaching, having your teacher name.
Okay, this is not a first year thing, but it happened last week actually. But it will help you as your teacher making up problems and doing things with kids, because this kid was taking a test online and he goes, "Oh, there's a bad word in here. There's a bad word in here." And I'm like, what? And I walk over and he points to it. And the person in there was named Dick.
Oh.
And he was like, "But that's a bad word." And I had to say, no, that's a name.
Right.
I go, "It's short for," I'm thinking, "It's for Richard." And this kid across the room went, "No, it's not. Rick is short for Richard." And someone else goes, "No, it's Rich." So they all just totally got off topic. So if you're making a test, watch what names you choose.
True.
Don't use, especially if they're older, the answer of 69 or 21.
Yeah, for sure. That's like a Billy Madison when they're like, "Turn to page 69," and he's like in second grade and he's like, "Huh," and nobody laughs because
there's a meme or something with 21, and it was a thing about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, but it's coming back because now it'll be 21 and they'll start laughing again.
Yeah, that's probably good to know if you teach middle school or high schools. Having an informant, because I'm definitely not cool enough to know, like, I don't even know what Stephanie is talking about. So
21, sure.
You need a kid to be like, "Can you proofread my test? I'll give you an extra point." If you tell me if there's, no, I'm just kidding. But they will tell you if there's some like goofy phrase or what it means.
Find a media savvy teen. Watch a little bit. Now it's not Saturday morning cartoons, but watch a little whatever they're watching and look at a game or have somebody. It's important to know, what Fortnite is and what is Among Us. And I mean, when my kids were little, it was great because they all watched Nickelodeon, so I knew all the characters and knew what was appropriate, knew when they shouldn't be saying this. So if you don't have one at home, find yourself a teenager somewhere, a niece, a nephew, a neighbor, to say, "Hey, why are they giggling?"
Right.
When we say Ohio, because apparently it's a song. I was just asking Annabelle, and she heard about it. Yeah. So, anyway.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way because I have a talking globe where they can like push on the different countries and states, and they were doing Ohio, and I was like, "What?" And they were laughing, and it was so fun. And then they burst into the song, and I'm like,
so all of you are running now Googling, what is Ohio? What's with that?
True. Especially if you're international. I have some international listeners, so if you're like, just whatever. Next time we'll give you a prompt, like, this is, California, U.S. Pacific weirdness. And like, maybe this doesn't apply to you.
Take it with a grain of salt.
Right. Or maybe it does. If Ohio made it to South Korea. Down in Ohio. Email info@thetimecrunchteacher.com. Melissa, what is your teacher story?
The moral of this story is invest in bike shorts.
Ooh, okay. We got to hear why.
All right. So in elementary, proximity is key. Getting close to students. And I always find I'm more of a jeans sort of girl, but there was one day in one of my first years of teaching where we were being observed for this big grant opportunity. And I wore a dress to school that day.
Right.
And I wore some wedge sandals. And after school, we were being interviewed for this an exit interview. They were going to select their cohort. And the bell rang. And I had to grab one thing from my car. My feet were sweaty. And I ran to the car quickly. And then I was sprinting in the other direction back towards the office where the interviewers were waiting for me. And I felt the slow motion effect of clumsiness, where these slick feet
on the wedges
shifted in the wedges. And before I knew it, was being propelled forward onto the cement, splayed out, right in front of the dozens of parents and dozens and dozens of students who were eating their after school snack. And I'm a big, proponent of community and family partners, but I exposed myself in a new way that day than I was ever anticipating to. And if I had bike shorts, it wouldn't have been an issue. But I heard this collective, as my knees are dripping blood, I couldn't even look at anybody, but all I heard was, ooh, from all of the parents.
Sorry, I'm laughing, but
I know. And I just felt a draft in the back as the dress definitely flapped up.
Oh.
And it was a thong day, my friends. So nobody ever mentioned it. We proceeded like nothing had happened as I power walked away with them dripping blood. But I have never since that day worn a dress without bike shorts. And I've never had
another issue of exposing
that I could
yourself.
tell a story about. So
that's rough, girl.
I just think, teachers, get yourself cozy, cover your goodies, and put on some bike shorts, and you will be thanking me later.
I'm more impressed. I'm sorry. I'm hung up on the part that you wore a thong to school because I'm proud of you.
That?
Yeah.
I know. Young me.
She's very young.
Me.
Yeah.
Carefree.
Back when we didn't wear 4 layers under our dress.
Yeah. This was like the mid 2000s. Yeah.
I always feel like, you're getting old when like, if you fall and people laugh, you're like, okay, I'm young. But if you fall and people are like, oh no, are you okay? You're like, oh no, I'm old. Like, oh, I just crossed into middle age. It seems serious now. Yeah. Oh. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, ladies. It was super fun. Is there any other stories that you want to share or any last minute advice you'd like to give our first year teachers if they're listening?
You got this. And thank you for being a connector in our society. You have taken on the ultimate challenge, and we commend you wholeheartedly. And your decision to listen to Mariel's podcast is already an excellent decision to help you support yourself in your career. But thank you for everything you're doing, and that gratitude, make sure that you're giving it to yourself, make sure you're spreading it to others, and happy almost summer.
Yeah, for sure. Stephanie, I think I skipped over your story. I feel terrible.
My story? Yeah. I did, about the test and what you don't put on a test.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
I have some other ones.
Clearly, I'm like one of your 3rd graders that was not paying. Wait, what are we doing? Yeah. What was the directions?
Although there was a kid on our field trip that I swear hasn't done any work lately. Like, just doesn't do anything. But she was the one who looked up at the trees and go, wow, those trees are definitely not parallel to each other. And I was like, what? She doesn't do anything. Yeah, because the trees were not parallel to each other. So apparently she has been listening.
See?
Ding, 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 ding.
She just needed to be brought outside.
Yeah, in the context of what was happening instead of writing it on paper.
Yeah, for sure.
And everybody should just remember that everybody has a bad day and makes mistakes. And I'm teaching the kids that you learn through your mistakes.
Celebrate them.
Oh, for sure.
That's your learning moment.
Yeah, and I think, we're expecting students and children to be vulnerable every day, right? They're making mistakes in front of peers, which is super rough. And so they will be shockingly, surprisingly, incredibly awesome and supportive when their teacher makes a mistake.
And they will feel also like, hey, my teacher did it too. It's okay if I make a mistake. And I'll even say, hey, I made a mistake. Or, good, you get a point. You found the error on the board. I did spell that wrong, didn't I?
Right. Yes. If you are still learning how to feel comfortable making mistakes, just pretend like you did it on purpose. Oh, you caught it. Oh, that's right. I knew I put one of the words up there wasn't going to be spelled right. Thank you. Yeah.
High five.
Yeah. High five. Good job. Editing skills in action. Yeah. Thank you so much, first year teachers. I think, it can feel overwhelming, of course, because everything's so new and coming at you at a couple different angles. But you have entered an incredibly rewarding field. I mean, listen to us, 18 years in, 25 years in, we're still here. We're still teaching different grades and helping, students and helping each other. But yeah, just know that it is an amazing career. There are tough moments, but build your network and you will have support through. And we love, love, love helping because we all remember what it's like that first year. And we're happy to be there for you as well. All right. Thank you so much for your kind attention today. Until next time, teachers. Bye for now.